This first poem is about a berry that's very rare. And in 20 years here, I've found exactly one nagoon berry. Nagoon berries. Fiddlehead ferns, white with desire, were climbing toward the light that was green between the branches, even though no leaves had formed, when I began my walk to the meadow, where I hoped to find the tongue-shaped flowers that promise purple fruit come fall, so firm and sweet that even the serpent would not have offered one to Eve, no matter what the guile of God, his charmer. This next poem, Denali, which is the Indian name for Mount McKinley, which we can't see, was written right over here by West High, where all of the tour bus companies take tourists to see Mount Denali. Of course, you can very seldom see Denali. Denali. When the year thickens into spring, aged men and their blue-haired wives, fragile in their bulbs of curving glass, ride silver buses to this scenic outlook parking lot to stand like raw recruits, nervous and unsure of how to act when face to face with this majestic peak that has no continental peer. One by one, they aim their cameras to the north and wait for the promised summit to appear. Above clouds that only autumn wind will thin, into this dark geography of shifting form, they summon light for them, for us, for God. When I was a boy, I considered it far more interesting to go to the pool hall than to go to school. And as I get older, I realize that that pool hall was a microcosm of life. The best players were at the head table, the worst players were near the door, and the crafty owned the building. This poem is about an old man who for years was at that head table. Pool shark. He was an ancient gambler, long vanished from the window table where the game became a way of life. Dim-eyed and reptilian, Willie Provincia sat on his favorite bench near the door and scanned the murk for fish. We came, duck-tailed and dumb, from school to lose at 9-ball, to that dank and wrinkled shark who held a dime store magnifying glass against his eye to line his shots before he cleaned the table. He took our quarters one by one. A fingerling, anxious for the light, I left that world. There is no small change in this Alaskan city where I live. You can see Earth's inviting bend toward Asia, and at times the coastal mountains buckle, clouds that form a vast and empty moonlit tent above us. At times I long to shine like bait in Willie's hand. On the Russian River, mending his line, the fisherman bends over the water like a dowser over his rod, in light the color of cream poured from a blue bowl. On a similar morning, a dragon carried Zhao Zuming to the sacred mountains as he cast his line to the tail of a promising pool. Walking the bank, I scan the holding pools for signs, for tails finning gin-clear water. At the head of my favorite pool, two fishermen throw snagged salmon on the bank, where they stiffen and die beneath a sky that offers no redemption. Alpenglow. Walking the tracks along the water's edge, I watched as light transformed the commonplace. Mud flats, inlet, tanker, barge, and gull. My world became a child's kaleidoscope, spinning bits of colored glass, the clash of alabaster salmon rows. The whistle of a Seward train sent me sliding down a gravel bank, away from swaying cars and falling rock. When the train was past, the light had changed. In its place, there was the sadness of a man flicking switches in a darkened house, who finds that all the rooms are empty. The wedding of Cecilia Demidov. Waiting for the priest to arrive, I marvel at how the rain gills each object. The wedding party on the steep path from the village, dank fireweed, fishing boats in the harbor. The ceremony begins. I listen to the deacon chant names of ancient czars and patriarchs and see their kinship in the faces of these Aleuts, fishermen who number fewer than their dead. Invited by the groom, I have come to observe with doubt this antique rite of golden crowns and icons, for I have read the breviary of blood, the genealogy of these Cossack names, and servitude in the name of the Lord. When the bells peal in celebration, we slide and tumble down the path, a scene from Chagall. White crosses, blue domes, flame-burnished clouds, the priest's black cassock, a billowing demon in the wind. The bride rides beside her lover in a battered yellow pickup truck. Warm rain is on every tongue. Descending from Turnagain Pass on the way home that night, lights from a long line of cars flicker on the thin road cut between dark mountains and the sea, sections of an icon screen. This next poem is about a mass murderer who 2 years ago, I believe, killed several people in a small Alaskan city, and how soon it seemed that he was starting to become a mythic figure. It's called Mountain Man. We get quite a few weird people that come through just because we're at the end of the road. Manly resident Lisa Vernay. James Silka from Illinois crossed the continent to its glacial heart and found no last gathering of mountain men, no willing squaws, no unnamed rivers. We learn of his dream from news reports. Did he find Manly a town like all towns, a place of small infidelities and lawns? For 2 weeks he camped at the end of the road before he gunned down those who came to the river to check their boats for winter damage. 10 dead at Manly, and before they gunned him down, he killed an airborne trooper with a single shot, like Jim Bridger bringing down a redskin. The son who drifted west, the cousin no one mentioned sober, a missing picture in the family album, American as apple pie and Conestoga wagons. Years from now, tourists driving Winnebagos will ask to see the spot where the mountain man cut down the lawman with his Bowie knife. This next poem is about another type of mythic Alaskan figure. It's a character who actually did ice skate from Dawson City to Nome during the gold rush. Dawson City, 1899. After buying several Indian dogs, we set out again. Around noon, we passed a big Norwegian who was headed for Nome on skates. A Gold Rush journal. 1. Leaving their diggings to the wind, miners rushed the waiting steamers, salting dreams of El Dorado, where a sayer's scales would balance with nuggets as big as thunderheads. Those without money to leave town when word reached Dawson of a Cape Nome strike were as lonely as lice without bodies to love. At night, cribs were burned and false fronts painted. Clerks washed the wooden walks of guilt. 2. I cut figures in the ice, then left for Nome in late November. Oxbows were scales on which I weighed the constellations in my fate. Bending into butchering winds, I dreamed veins thick as bacon slabs. Voices from a field of tundra flowers called my name. I skated for the shore, where twisted figures offered me a steaming bowl, then vanished in a caw of ravens, lifting like a blackened altar. I fell to my knees and sang with a trembling voice that seized my throat. 3. Nome's gray tent sagged like miner's lungs. In her front street crib, Nell the pig draped her girls in wedding dresses and sold them for their weight in gold. On the beach, a line of rocker men shoveled back the rising tides. When my ship sailed for Seattle, they moved like moles in darkened shafts. Cutting the Christmas tree. The road north from Anchorage wound through mountains like a string of lights on the tree we searched for every year. He filled and tapped his pipe, talked of one son about to join the army, and of his 1-year-old daughter, and finally of his parents on the farm. When we entered the woods, it was snowing. I expected a stranger to appear and ask him home to meet the wife and kids, to see the barn and then the Christmas crib. We followed a game trail across a frozen swamp and through a maze of stunted spruce and moose-cropped willows. He wanted to cut the first trees we found that were full and thicker than our wrists above the waist-deep snow. I said we needed one worthy of his daughter. As we trudged beyond the other cutters' voices, searching for the perfect stand, the season rode me like an angry child. Reaching the second ridge, I turned to tell him of my need to walk until the cold lashed my face as my cruel words had lashed. Parents I blame for giving what they had, and then it was too late to ask forgiveness. He stood far below, a small white-bearded ghost who called and called my name. We turned back and cut 2 trees we passed an hour before. The back trail was drifted over, and behind the lifting clouds, the night was black. It was too cold to talk. Our eyes were narrowed slits of ice. If someone in a cabin on the distant ridge watched us cutting, We might have seemed to be figures in one of those glass globes his parents treasured, where a sleigh approaches a farm and a man drags a great tree from his woods. A gentle snow is falling on the scene. Poem for my father. When the room clerk, after last month's rent, forced the door, it was almost too late for the undertaker's gaudy art. You left nothing behind when you vanished from this town you never left. Crossing the Textile Avenue Bridge after your unattended wake, I watch a sad moon drag its empty net across the river, and remember the night a friend of yours told me you wanted to be a tenor. I never heard you sing. Once in a pool I fished for carp and sucker to sell to lumpish Polish women. I caught a speckled fish someone called a trout before it slipped the hook a foot below the dam and disappeared. A gold and copper fish that made me want to sing. Soon I will believe that fish was you. Thank you.